In the vast, humid stretches of the Pacific in 1943, a young Marine unscrewed the cap of his newly issued canteen, an odd, golden-brown plastic thing that looked more like a toy than battlefield equipment. He lifted it to his lips, expecting at least the comfort of lukewarm water. Instead, he recoiled instantly. The taste was sharp, acrid, almost metallic in a way that metal never tasted. It was as if the water had been mixed with bitter medicinal chemicals. He forced himself to swallow a second mouthful, hoping it was just his imagination. It wasn't. Within minutes he felt his stomach twist. Across the island, the same scene unfolded again and again. Dozens of Marines spat the water out, dumped their canteens in frustration, or desperately improvised solutions. Some tried adding baking powder, hoping to neutralize the bizarre bitterness. Others simply refused to drink altogether, even as temperatures soared well over 100 degrees. The canteen, originally conceived to conserve precious aluminum for aircraft, was turning out to be a silent enemy. This incident wasn't random. It was the end result of a bold, overly optimistic American attempt to surpass a German innovation. The United States believed they could outperform Germany by removing metal from the canteen entirely. What emerged instead was a fiasco that would leave troops dehydrated, sick, and furious. To understand how the Americans reached this point, we must rewind 2 years to a completely different battlefield. German, Coconut Canteen, where ITLL began, North Africa, 1941. The scorching desert sun beat down on German soldiers of the Afrika Korps as they marched across endless dunes. Observers noticed something unusual dangling from their belts. Instead of the standard felt-covered aluminum flasks the Wehrmacht typically used, these troops carried canteens that looked like brown, textured shells, almost like coconuts. Soldiers and Allied observers alike quickly gave them a nickname: the Coconut Canteen. But these weren't tropical souvenirs. They represented one of the smartest examples of wartime material engineering. Back in Esslingen and Neckar, inventor Heinrich Ritter and his team had experimented with a new material they called Durofol, a composite made by compressing thin layers of wood veneer together with phenolic resin. The result was a dense, durable, heat-resistant shell. But here's the crucial part. The Durofol never touched the drinking water. At the heart of every German coconut canteen was a conventional aluminum liner, shaped exactly like the metal flasks Germany had used for decades. The innovation wasn't about replacing the metal. It was about replacing the felt covering, which was heavy, water-absorbent, fragile, and resource-intensive. By swapping the felt for a composite shell, Germany saved materials and improved durability without sacrificing water safety. The Durofol shell was clever for many reasons. It was waterproof, preventing mold and rot. It insulates more effectively, letting evaporation cool the canteen. It was tough, resisting harsh desert conditions far better than felt. It conserved material, using wood abundant and resin chemically stable while still keeping the aluminum core. And most importantly, the water never touched the resin. The metal liner preserved purity, taste, and safety. Germany's design wasn't flashy. It was practical, a hybrid solution that saved some resources while protecting what mattered most: the soldiers' drinking water. From 1941 to 1943, the Coconut Canteen became standard across multiple fronts. By all accounts, it worked flawlessly. American ambition takes a wrong turn. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C. in early 1942, the War Production Board faced a crisis. Aluminum, the lifeblood of aircraft production, was being consumed faster than factories could deliver. A single B-17 bomber required more than 2 tons of the metal. A P-51 Mustang demanded another full ton. Every bit of aluminum mattered. The aluminum canteens carried by U.S. troops suddenly seemed like an extravagance. The Army Quartermaster Corps scrambled for alternatives. Their first attempt involved porcelain-coated steel canteens. On paper, this seemed clever. In practice, it was dangerous. The enamel coating chipped easily, contaminating the water. Some fragments were sharp. Others caused severe stomach pain. By mid-1942, after millions had been produced, the Army quietly pulled them from overseas deployment. Then intelligence reports arrived describing the German composite shell canteen. The key points sounded promising. Reduced use of metal, rugged outer shell, proven performance under harsh conditions. Quartermaster officials studied Germany's approach, but misunderstood its core principle. Instead of appreciating the clever compromise preserve the metal liner, innovate around it, U.S. planners took the idea in a radical direction. If Germany could reduce metal usage by replacing the outer layer, the U.S. reasoned, why not go all the way and eliminate metal completely? THE plastic canteen that shouldn't have been. Midland, Michigan. The Dow Chemical Company stepped forward with a proposal that dazzled planners hungry for innovation. Since 1935, Dow had produced a material called Ethocellulose, marketed as Ethocel. It was moldable, lightweight, and already in use for radios, toys, and industrial parts. Dow pitched it as the perfect metal replacement. The Quartermaster Corps agreed. Why simulate the German composite shell around a metal flask when you could build the entire canteen out of plastic? In September 1942, Dow molded 10,000 prototype canteens. They looked modern, smooth, amber-colored, and neatly welded together at a horizontal midline seam. They used the same Bakelite screw cap as existing canteens, but the crucial difference was invisible. The drinking water rested directly against the plastic. No liner, no barrier, just raw ethyl cellulose touching the water. Test boards initially gave positive evaluations. Officers reported that the canteens performed adequately under controlled conditions. There was only one minor issue noted. The plastic imparts a slight odor and taste to the water. This warning should have stopped the program. Instead, it was brushed aside. Officials reasoned that in field conditions, soldiers wouldn't mind a little odd flavor. They could not have been more wrong. Pacific nightmare. Reality hits hard. By early 1943, shipments of the new plastic canteens began reaching the Pacific. Marines filled them with water, raised them to their lips, and instantly regretted it. The water tasted alien, harsh, chemical, medicinal. Some described it as drinking from a bottle soaked in paint thinner. Under the native heat of the Pacific Islands, the plastic began to leach compounds into the water at accelerated rates. The very characteristic that made ethyl cellulose easy to mold. The presence of solvents and plasticizers made it unsafe for prolonged contact with drinking water. Even worse, the tropical sun superheated the canteens. Warm water pulled even more chemical residue from the plastic, amplifying the flavor and the nausea that followed. Marines soon realized they were caught in an impossible dilemma: drink chemically tainted water and risk stomach sickness, or refuse to drink and risk collapse from dehydration. Some attempted a crude solution, adding baking powder to the water. It reduced the harshness slightly, but not enough. Soon, plastic canteens were being tossed aside across beaches, foxholes, and along jungle trails. Photographs from the era show them abandoned in piles. One veteran later recalled that his father's unit in Europe had the same reaction. The canteen was unusable. Everywhere the plastic canteen appeared, troops rejected it. THE science behind THE failure. Ethyl cellulose simply wasn't chemically stable enough for long-term water storage, especially not in extreme heat. The resin contained unreacted components that migrated into the water. These compounds weren't acutely toxic in the small quantities that leached out, but they tasted horrible and caused nausea, headaches, and stomach cramps. The failures continued. Heat softened the canteen, causing warping. Boiling water to sterilize the canteen ruined it. Cold temperatures caused cracking or shattering. Alcohol dissolved the plastic completely. Stress lines formed along the welded seam. The canteen was fundamentally unfit for the job. The Germans had avoided all of this by keeping their resin composite on the outside, away from the water. Their phenolic resin was chemically stable, heavily cross-linked, and used in a roll where it had no risk of contaminating anything. The Americans overlooked the distinction. Practical engineering vs. technological overreach. Why did the German canteen succeed where the American one failed? Because Germany engineered around limitations. America engineered through them, blindly. Germany asked, "What materials can we replace without threatening safety?" America asked, "How far can we push innovation?" This difference in mindset made all the difference. Germany understood that the aluminum liner was essential. It was proven, safe, and reliable under heat, cold, and long storage. Their innovation focused on the outer shell, where the risk was low. America broke the one rule of battlefield equipment. Never gamble with the part that keeps your troops alive. ENDOOFTHE program. A quiet retreat. Ironically, just as the plastic canteen entered production, the War Production Board announced that aluminum was once again available for canteen manufacturing. With this announcement, momentum behind the plastic canteen collapsed almost overnight. Although the Quartermaster Corps had authorized production of 3.75 million plastic units, only a small fraction were ever made. Those that did reach troops were eventually stamped with a blunt condemnation mark. IC, inspected and condemned. To soldiers, that stamp needed no explanation. The canteens had already condemned themselves. By 1944, production ceased entirely. The plastic canteen would go down in history not as a breakthrough, but as a cautionary tale of wartime overconfidence. Legacy, ENDTHE lessons left behind. Today, surviving plastic canteens are rare. Many contain the chalky remains of baking powder marines added to mask the taste. Almost all display cracks, warping, or discoloration, silent reminders of a failed experiment. In contrast, German composite canteens continued production through 1945 and influenced post-war gear due to their reliability. The story of these two canteens teaches a timeless lesson. Innovation must never outrun practicality, especially on the battlefield. The Germans succeeded because they understood where to innovate and where to stop. They preserved the aluminum liner because it was a solved problem. They improved what they safely could, the outer covering. The Americans, driven by ambition and pressured by wartime shortages, tried to leap ahead of proven technology. But the leap was too far for 1940s plastics to manage. What resulted was equipment that endangered soldiers rather than aiding them. Sometimes practical compromise is genius. Sometimes keeping the old solution is smarter than inventing a new one. And sometimes, as Marines in the Pacific learned the hard way, water is too important to entrust to an untested idea.